Well, hello! Welcome to REPO. REPO is a really fun game made by a group of people known as Semi-Works. In it, you take charge of a silly yet humorous looking semi-bot. Your job? Collect items to tax the rich, or something along those lines. I'm honestly not too sure. This is not a lore video. This is about that sweet green. REPO is more or less intended to be played with friends. And you may have tried it yourself to get a high quota or even do this very challenge itself. But I am not most people, and I stupidly decided I wanted to do it solo. And I decided to do this solo with only 5 total hours in the game at that point. I also decided to do this on the newest patch, 0.2, that changes a lot, including adding an entirely new level, a bunch of new items, and the dastardly moon phases. So allow me to take you on the journey with me. And hey, if you're new, feel free to subscribe while you're here. It's free and you can always change your mind. Attempt 1 went much better than you'd initially think. Went better than even I thought it would. Despite only having 5 hours at this point and really not knowing everything or how to do everything. In general, each attempt is going to teach me some sort of lesson before I get to the attempt. And overall, especially being so new to the game, it introduced me to mostly just new entities. In this case, the what did I say? The Scissor Lady, which made me realize that, oh, enemies do despawn. It was something that my friend had mentioned briefly when we were playing during those 5 hours. Should they despawn or something? Is that a thing? I vaguely remember my friend being like, oh, they despawned. But I wasn't too sure if that was just kind of mumbo garbage or if he was meaning something else. It was very direct. Enemies do respawn when you're not around them for a period of time. It's a very useful note to make, especially early on when you can't deal with them very easily. The eyeball and big head man were another thing I learned. They're just kind of weird entities. The eyeball is, it'll appear in a random top spot, sometimes in a really weird corner. But essentially, you just have to break line of sight, otherwise you'll start taking damage after, I think, about 3 to 5 seconds. And then this big head man, he's blind. That's all you really need to know. The most important thing that you have to understand about REPO is the importance of being in your smallest state. You see, in REPO, every single enemy works on a cone of vision, if you will. This cone of vision will shrink based off of what state your player character is. You have 3 player states: standing, crouching, and what I call crawling or hidden. When you are in this hidden state, unless you look at them directly for a few entities or are poking out greatly and they run over you or whatever, you're practically invisible. I also learned a little bit each time that primarily the extractions goes up per linear level. I don't know if that makes any sense. Let me explain. So, on the first level, or quota, you only have 1 extraction. 1 point you have to get to, and it's always at the beginning. Every first extraction will be at the beginning. On your second level, you now have 2 extractions. So, you have to do 1, which, like I said, is always at the beginning next to the truck, and then another one that's just somewhere in the level. It does that for 2 levels. So, on the 4th level, you now have 3 quotas, and then after 3 levels of 3 quotas, it goes to 4 quotas, if that makes sense. But then it kind of breaks that pattern. It's just, that's the pattern for the beginning. That is also something that should be taken note of, because in a lot of cases, getting as many items in that first extraction is better, just because of, you don't want to drag around a bunch of items towards the end, especially when you have to make a great run. It's just easiest to get to that first one, bag it up, take it to the second one, right? So it's another random thing that I noted, at least on this first attempt. Now, once you get to your last extraction, the biggest thing that I took note of was that all entities that you came across, or maybe even missed, will respawn, and they are pinged directly to your truck, your escape. Basically, depending on what level you have, you are required to do those 4 extractions, right? So, depending on how far your last one is, most entities will actually spawn in or near the truck, which like you have to get to leave. So it makes it very difficult in a lot of cases. It makes it just kind of annoying. You have to hide. So ironically, even in this first attempt, I realized that I could go and try to find the furthest extraction, do that one, then do the second one. At least when you get to the 3 extractions. For the 2 extractions, you're kind of stuck doing the furthest one. Ironically, on my first attempt here, I hailed the new crouch reset upgrade. The crouch reset upgrade is something that came with the update 2.0, or 0.2 I should say. Essentially what it is it will very noticeably increase how fast your stamina recharges when crouched. Kind of useful, but like I said, I initially hailed this. I just kind of didn't care about it later on, because later on you get enough stamina to it not matter. The other item that I praised and realized how good it was the feather drone. Somehow I forget this later on, but the feather drone in short will make every item almost like it's zero gravity. There is a zero gravity drone, but it's much worse. This just makes anything significantly lighter. In Repo, there tends to be a lot of heavy items, and often items that are very large, like a piano, that you have to drag around for $40,000 to $50,000. So they're items you kind of need, but they're a pain in the arse to get around. This being said, my first attempt was still relatively short. You know, I only reached quota 3. Dying to someone will get pretty familiar with. The Huntsman basically has supersonic hearing on account for being chronically blind. Only he's an angry old man with a shotgun as a blind stick and a short trigger finger. So ultimately, early game, seeing him it just means you have to play significantly slower than you already do. He's not really to be messed with, and that trigger finger will light you up quicker than you'd last in bed. This time around, already taking notes of the first attempt, we'd end up blazing through the first 2 quotas in about 25 minutes. A far cry from what I did in that first one, and for a little noob, I mean, it's gotta be worth something. The first tactic I learned from attempt 1 was how to combat those enemies I saw in the first one. This will follow me for every single attempt, like I said. In an attempt 2 here during the 3rd quota, I'd end up in a new level, one I hadn't played up to this point somehow. The mansion, or the manor. This manor has a lot of entities that I hadn't seen before, namely this rogue guy who I swore I would not fuck with. I didn't know what he did, and I didn't want to figure that out. That is not something I want to see. What? At least to the best of my abilities. The only note I could make off the rip was that he was quiet. He made no noise, and that petrified me. It is not said enough, but this game is actually relatively horrifying playing it alone, at least for the first like dozen hours, I would say. This made me take nearly 30 minutes to do quota 3 alone, but in the end I would end up doing it, so this is technically a new PB. It's shocking how every single gameplay loop is pretty easy as long as you're patient. Repo is a very strategic game compared to something like Lethal Company. It has no real time constraint when you need to complete your quota or level. The only thing tied to time are the spawns and the pings to your location from what I'm aware, and I like this significantly more than things like Lethal Company. Not to mention the physics-based gameplay being a large part of why I enjoy Repo. It's a sinister game, it's a little bit scarier, it's a lot more forgiving, but it's also still way more goofy and there's way more situations where I will die because I'm laughing at something happening. It's a fun game, and I enjoy these really early segments. The primal fear of seeing something or somebody new and not knowing what they did and how to deal with them was just horrifying, especially when we're looking at several hours of gameplay. This attempt is also where I would meet the frog clown laser guy. He sure exists. I killed this guy, which I realized was due to strength, as I wasn't able to pick him up in my previous attempt. This is a fundamental understanding you'll need to make it through a solo challenge like this. Strength very quickly became the priority, as the more strength you have, the faster and easier you can handle any enemy, to a point at least. It will change later on, but you'll see why. I really like this, and I like that killing enemies is profitable, but still an item, one of the most delicate at that. On top of that, the items being delicate and, very fragile, after 3 deaths of that enemy, they will actually stop dropping that said item. So it's not like it's an infinite money farm, no matter how easily you can kill them. I like how much care was put into these systems and how they're handled. It's rather brilliantly designed, and I appreciate everything that these devs have done. It's all an evolution of the games before it, and it's mastered the iconity for it. Brilliant work. Semi-work. Oh, okay, numbers would just fit like that, I guess. So here is a very important lesson, and I never made a mistake like this again. Your cart, the one you have to carry to have all the items, including your money bag, falls if you hold its handle. However, holding it directly or in its quote-unquote weak state, from the sides or from the bottom, you are able to pick it up like normal. You see, when I'm playing through the game, I had done that prior. I had picked it up from the side and knew that, you could lift it up and everything, and that it could go over pits and whatnot. So I thought that was the same thing with the handle. It's not. Mistakes are best made in the early game, I suppose, but this was still really irritating to have happened. I'm not a fan of this, but it happened, and it never happened again. Here is the first of many clown item kills. Not the clown frog guy, but the clown item. This is one of the most powerful items in the game, and it spawns naturally. And honestly, I love that it exists at all. Essentially what it is just a little clown guy, but if you honk his nose 3 times, you sacrifice about 2,000 to 3,000 to make him explode. And this explosion, I think, deals like however much damage, kills pretty much every entity. And you can get upwards of 7k if you use this right and sparingly on certain enemies. I really like stuff like this. It's kind of missing a Lethal Company, and I know I keep it's already like the 3rd comparison I've made to that, but that's the only role comparison that we have. I don't do this to knock down Lethal Company. I do this to acknowledge that REPO took the systems and ideas and concepts and improved on everything it was, and I like that. But this clown item is very, very unique. You can even pre-charge it, so like I said, on the 3rd honk of his nose is when he'll explode, but you can press it twice, and then just press the 3rd one when you're ready to throw it. You still have to be careful, because this will very easily kill you. That is remarkable. Holy shit, the talent I possess is insane. Attempt 2, unfortunately, and fairly anticlimactically, would end because this is the first time I came across a new entity. I would call him the Marshmallow Man. Turns out what he does is he'll blow you out of the way, launching you in whatever that direction is, or in my case, into the pit. So unfortunately, that's how that ended. A really good attempt. We're talking almost 3 hours into it, only to die because I didn't know what something did, and what it did just happened to launch me directly into the only thing I can't get out of. It's a little unfortunate, but is what it is. Attempt 2, still far better than I expected. Attempt 3. Only super notable thing here is having strength off the start. 2 to be exact. I realized how OP even that was, and so from here on it was the sole priority. Before it was like, the priority. No, it was the sole priority. It was what I was looking for and hoping for every single time I went into the shop. I also learned what this entity, Rugrat, is. And there's truthfully only so much I can talk about with each one. Out of all the ones it took me, I'd say a good half kind of just fall into whatever pattern I was doing, and they get pretty simple, as the only real thing of note is going to be my death from this point forward. Most of the time, this is just how they go. Sometimes something cool or weird would happen, but you don't really dwell on it because you got to keep moving.
Son of a bitch.
So attempt 3 kind of just came and went. The only reason I died to attempt 3 was because of stupidity and blindly running into a room. I would not make this mistake again, of course, but it still hurt to lose, again, nearly 3 hours of progress. Tumbling is what this is called. Would be something I'd grow out of over time, because it's not actually that good of an ability, and truthfully isn't worth a while unless you need to hide or are in a pinch and just need that extra distance. There is an upgrade for this that I kept buying because I kept thinking, oh, this is a good upgrade. It's not. It is not worthwhile to tumble, especially tumbling farther, because later on, those death pits become almost every room. Blindly doing this, for instance, takes all control from you as well, leaving you vulnerable to anything, far more than you'd otherwise be. Sad that this is how I died, and it really pissed me off because I think I died. I lost all my momentum, and I'm not sure why. And so that's generally what pissed me off, but I knew that it was still my fault at the end of the day for just attempting to jump into an area I had no knowledge of. You don't want to do that, and definitely later on, you start saving your stamina and start being much more methodical about everything. It doesn't matter if you're getting chased or not. Attempt 4 started so well that I never even saw an entity in the first level. Sometimes just the right combination of things happen for that to occur, but it's always so odd. Ironically, the very first shop is a great showcase how even one item in the level, like messing up one item and not getting the money for it, in most cases will actually lock you out of getting a useful or good upgrade. In most cases, I'd say that's how it goes, because you'll always have a little bit more than you need to buy something in the shop, of course. So that means you'll always be a little bit short of buying something else. This also means that you only needed a little bit. Every 1,000 or every couple hundred counts, especially in solo. This is just a prime example, and it happened almost every shop because, like I said, you always have that little bit. So it doesn't matter if it was just $1,000 or $600. It counts. It counts quite significantly, and it adds up pretty quickly. Attempt 4 would be another one of the runs that only made it to quota 3. In fact, this is the quickest yet, dying to the Robe Man as I finally, unfortunately, figured out how he works. Deaths like this are good training because I didn't know what he did. Now I do. I know exactly how he worked, so I understood exactly how to avoid him. It also showed me that enemies, despite how they look or act, can still reach you and do things that you didn't expect them to be able to do. I am not safe just because I think I know I'm safe. I'm not safe just because I think I know what's going on either. What a jump scare, though. Attempt 5. This attempt saw me meet a good new friend. Somehow I hadn't run into him yet. The Child. A very rather unthreatening but initially quite horrifying entity that you simply don't look at for very long, or they will, I don't know, kill you probably. I honestly have no clue what they do because I never actually looked at them too long for them to do anything. I'm gonna get jump scared. Oh fuck! I literally called it! Holy fuck! Attempt 5 would also see the grand return of my nemesis, the blind guy. Fucking shoots me in the face. I made it all the way to, the end of level 4, which again isn't too bad, especially for like a 5th attempt, but it's so far from where we need to be. He was an obstacle I hadn't fully learned how to deal with. Ironically, him shooting me directly isn't what killed me, but rather is what led to another enemy that could. The alien, I don't know what this guy's called, took that personally because I was hiding above him, and so he lifted me up and then slammed me down. I was already way too low on health due to being shot and everything, so yeah, this attempt just, again, more little lessons to be learned. Entities can still get you regardless of how high I think or how out of reach I am. It doesn't matter. They're all threatening and they all are going to get you eventually. Attempt 6 would be the shortest attempt yet, dying almost immediately. We're talking within minutes to the Scissor Lady. I had grown a bit impatient, especially from the last one, and just wasn't taking my time, which meant I would die almost every time. It's the nature of the game. I was frustrated by the previous attempt, and that made this one by far the worst one, and it remains, I think, the second worst. Nothing more of note really happens here other than I realized I need to do more stamina management. Attempt 7. This attempt saw me trying to use items to kill enemies. Very poorly. This backfired so hard. I wouldn't really try it very often. Silly AntKen. He returns. And this time, he does end up winning. One note for attempt 7 is I learned that you could manipulate shop items by not using them, which, although is good information, later on I also realized you could just quit out, reload into the save, and it refreshes the shop. So, you know, I don't know. I don't really care if that's a bug. I mean, obviously it is. There's just no point in suffering more in a challenge like this. Trust me. I've learned the hard way with challenges. You do what's best and easiest for you. I will never use a glitch or cheat to make them like, oh, it totally changes it, the easiest humanly possible, in which, well, there's no challenge then. No, I will still try to do them as legitimately and normal as possible, but sometimes you just gotta take what you can get. If I can refresh the shop to get better items, sometimes that's just better. It was useful knowledge that I found out, at least for the early game. Attempt 7 was slowly shaping up to be the attempt, actually. Everything was going very, very well. And it's actually where I bought the first weapon, the shotgun. Something I still praise to this moment because it's a really good item. Figuring this out so early wasn't the best plan though, because REPO is about strategy. It's about playing safe and smart. The weapons, although useful and very powerful in most cases, kind of work against you in some. It puts you at, more risk, therefore making it much easier to mess up or die. It also wastes more money in the process for an item, and eventually the recharge crystals. So in that regard, and with retrospective, it's very easy to see how it wasn't the best ideas, even at the time. But let me tell you, it was revolutionary. By level 8, I felt like I had this. I also, this is where I finally got past the 5th quota, which is where the moon phases come in. It's part of the new mechanic that came with the update, but it doesn't do a whole lot to level 10. I think in this case, it just makes it so you get less health from the truck, and items themselves, like throwing them at enemies and stuff, doesn't do as much damage. Point is, I never saw me losing this run. I had the strategy down. I knew how most things worked, and I knew them well enough. I really didn't think I would have that big of a problem doing this. By level 9, I actually had a second weapon, the invincibility drone, something that is going to start becoming a mainstay. I had 300 health, 140 stamina. I was golden. I would have, and probably was going to start saving money right here after the next level or quota and begin that 1 million grind. My goal is to have 1 million in the pocket, so I gotta start at some point. Here's the issue. With all the other upgrades and weapons that I had, I didn't have that much strength. I only had about 6, which is still good, but it's not good enough to, start picking up enemies and stuff. So in this case, when the huntsman, like I said, he would come back, he fell. He trips downstairs, which I think is very funny. This unfortunately got him wedged between the stairs and a random table. I wasn't sure what to do here. I didn't want to waste my ammo. I decided to try and simply lift him, throw him into the pit that was right there, and kind of try to just move on. I thought I could. I thought maybe 6 strength was enough to at least try to lift him. He's stuck. What could he do?
Are you kidding?
I really should have just used the weapons that I spent so much money on. That was almost 4 hours into a run. It's just irritating. He shot me both through the table and then continued to shoot me because I was just next to him. Despite him not being able to move, his gun is just, it's hit scan, and I don't understand that really. Although I think it's a very interesting enemy. When they break and everything, it can be really demoralizing to try to continue to play. At the end of the day, though, this was another lesson in, again, strategy. Sometimes it's best to just do the simplest solution. Just, if I can kill him, get rid of him, instead of risking more, it should just be done to get it out of the way. Fortunately, this attempt ended, so. Attempt 8 was the shortest one, actually less than 2 minutes. I died to the roadman here within those just 2 minutes. Essentially how this game works is you have tier 3 enemies, tier 2 enemies, and tier 1 enemies. And each level you're in will slowly increase how many of those tiers can spawn. In most cases, the tier 3 enemy, there'll only be one in the first couple of levels, or it'll be a few tier 2 enemies. Unfortunately though, a few of the tier 3 enemies, like the Roadman for instance, if they spot you, especially in the early game, when you don't have stamina, you don't have strength, you don't have mobility, you know, you just kind of lose. That's the quickest one, and it happens. Attempt 9. Attempt 9, I tried to set up a life split for, I think, both attempt 9 and 10, but I gave up on 10. Although, you know, I did quickly get rid of it because it just felt unnecessary. I just wanted to do this because I wanted to showcase, you know, how long everything took. But at the end of the day, it's hours. It's hours and hours and hours. And I don't think it's very necessary to show, like, okay, this attempt took me, or this level took me 40 minutes, this level took me 50 minutes. Like, I just didn't see that really being a point. It kind of felt distracting. So the main thing to know other than the life split for this attempt was another lesson in stamina. I died to the Scissor Lady on quarter 3, and unfortunately, again, it's just another one of those cases of I wasted my stamina before running into an enemy. There's really nothing you can do when you do that, so you have to be cautious. It's better to take it slow than trying to rush. Attempt 10. Quarter 3. We're just gonna skip through all that crap. Once again, the Huntsman. No! I don't know why. For whatever reason, quarter 3 specifically, or this early game, started becoming some sort of mind block for me. And it got more and more frustrating each time, because you have to remember that even getting to quarter 3 is about an hour or two. It doesn't really matter how quickly I do it. I'm not, you know, just going for quarter. I'm going for every single item as, you know, the best of the condition that I can get. Every level takes, even the first one takes about 10 to 15 minutes at shortest. So quarter 3 is an hour or two, and continually to die on that early game just kind of starting to become a little bitter. It started becoming a lot more frustrating as I didn't feel there was much more I could be doing. To be truthful, that's the hardest part of this challenge, is the early game. Like I said, there's really not much more to it. Attempt 11 wouldn't go any better, dying on just quarter 2. Again, I say that, but that was still 40 minutes. It's unfortunate. Attempt 12. Every enemy so far has had their quirks, right? They've had their weird gimmicks, and they do have slight overhauls with their own kind of horror. And sometimes the worst thing for you is just the duck. Wrong time, right moment, and bam, you lose. Despite making it all the way to quota 6 in this attempt, or level 6 in this case, you'd think I had finally gotten past my little mini mind block for the last, 5 attempts, at least with the early deaths, and I was hopefully locked in. The reality is, I was locked in. The reality is also kind of disappointing. I still hadn't learned everything. REPO is a really good game because it slowly adapts and changes things to make it harder rather than let it remain the way it is and you just get to figure it out, or it's just brutally difficult from the start. Although I think there still needs to be more balancing in the later levels, it's very good. One of these balances is that enemies, or at least certain ones, kind of change what they do ever so slightly to make them more lethal. One such enemy is a ghost guy. He has heavy footsteps and breathing, and when he sees you, he will attempt to grab you and drag you, usually in the opposite direction of where you're trying to go. He's more of an annoyance, and I've always dealt with him as an annoyance of, well, if he picks me up, right? I always thought that was all he could do, and there was nothing more to that. However, as it turns out, and as the rooms get more dangerous with pits, you come across a few things that surprise you. One of those things is that an enemy who's supposed to just carry you in a random place, this entity, on later levels can actually kamikaze you into the death pits. In my case, as a solo player, ending the run. No! God! Fuck! You... What? What? This was probably the most unfortunate death for me because I was just trying to save the orb. So when he picked me up and the orb broke, that's what I was frustrated at. I didn't even... the thought of him like literally kamikazing into a pit was never a thought to me. I thought maybe he would drop me and I would roll into a pit. That's what I was prepared for. What am I supposed to do in that situation? All it did was make me realize that every enemy is dangerous. Every single. It is not a case of I can deal with them after, or some of them are just annoyances. No, they are all lethal. You have to be careful. Attempt 12 was probably the next runner-up for getting to this million quota, but this kind of cemented itself as one of the final lessons I needed to learn. It brings us to attempt 13. 13 usually isn't my good luck number, but for once, I think things were changing for the better. After all the deaths from before, especially that haunted one, like I said, it taught me that lesson of everything is a threat. Patience is key, and it reigns supreme no matter the cause. It's best to lose a few thousand in order not to die. I also finally would end up going back to using the feather drone, and I found that you could use multiple drones, feather drone with the indestructible drone. That combo allows you to pick up anything and rush big items, saving time, money, and overall is just more efficient. This is also where I started using the trank gun, or the tranquilizer gun, rather than a shotgun, as it's much cheaper and you can get it much earlier in the game. I had been sleeping on these items, but as it turns out, playing the non-aggressive, passively attacking and manipulating creatures works so much better than the full-on aggression that I was trying to do with the shotgun. You see, after enough strength, as I said before, I think at about 8, you can pick up almost every entity when they're knocked out, which, hey, what item knocks them out with just one shot? So early game was about patience and being careful, whereas towards the late game, it was now smartly using your tranquilizer gun and the same pits that are so lethal to you, and using it on the enemies, and using it to your advantage. Pure strategy over aggression. It's simple in retrospective, but this is what turned the tables, and it still took me almost 40 hours to realize this. And this is the strategy I think most people end up running for high quotas. I may have brushed most attempts to the side during this video, kind of like, oh, this was this. Like I said, they're upwards of 3 to 5 hours at a time. Now, the new update, 0.2.0, right? It's what the video's title is and everything, and I slightly alluded it to before. Where does this come into play? Well, this was the only time I made it past level 10. It turns out that, so every 5, I believe up to level 20, it makes the game a little bit harder in whatever moon phase you have going on. Turns out at 10, the second moon phase, it changes kind of everything, or at least makes it a lot harder. Remember how I said using pits and strength through enemies into those pits was the best way to deal with them? The devs know that too. Starting from level 10 and onward, they introduce both less damage to enemies falling in pits, as well as this new overcharge feature. The overcharge feature directly affects the entire gameplay or strategy around this. The longer you hold any enemy, and depending on their size, or like mass I guess, it will begin to quote-unquote overcharge you. If you let it, I had to look this up because I never let it, you get stunned and take damage. I never did this, ironically, but the point is, this shifted from being, just shoot them with a tranquilizer gun, drag them 2 rooms away into a pit, to I now need to be more careful. I need to do it very sparingly, and I had to make sure that when I did it, they were already next to a pit, otherwise there was no way I was going to be able to drag them, right? It just made it ever so slightly harder and more multifaceted, I guess. I'm not sure if this is the best solution to combat, strength stacking, I guess, but in conjunction with the less damage of the pits, I think it's generally fine. And it definitely worked because I would end up buying an actual weapon. I mean, might as well directly kill them if I can't drag them into a pit, going back to my previous way. But even at the end of the day, the tranquilizer gun it is the best. It reigned supreme. And the pit still did enough damage, and, of course, would always stun lock them anyway. So it was just more work, but overall, it doesn't change that much. At least for level 10 onward. But this was it. As long as I was careful, this should have been it. That's all I had to do. Just be careful. My health just, it would sneak down that line. Oh shoot, if I get shot, I'm dead. But I held in there. It was the last quota. 400,000, 500,000, 600,000, 700,000, 800,000, 900,000 in the bank. I just needed one more level. This was it. Did I die? Okay. Okay. I don't know what happened. I think I may have died, but it still counted it. That is the clutchest thing I've ever done. So, that was close. I am still unsure as to what happened here. I think I did die and the game just gave it to me. Maybe in an alternate timeline, like by a fraction of a second before, I would have lost this run. But it was crazy that I had it. So this was it. The last quota. Level 15. A new moon. And now there were 5 extraction points. Even less damage? Holy shit. Alright, baby head is resilient. Good to know. This is a lot. Nothing broke. I am baffled. You good? Ah, damn. There we go. I don't know, this is 5 hours into this session alone, but overall, man. That's it! Yes! Yes! Oh my god! Ah! Finally! 1.2... what? Okay. 1.022k, which... 1,000,000 is a million. Oh, but I did it. Holy shit. I don't know what's going on with my health. I thought I was loaded. And that was REPO. I don't really have any concluding thoughts necessarily, other than I really enjoyed this game, and I really enjoyed doing this challenge. It took me about a week and a half, almost 300 gigabytes of recorded footage, and just under 50 hours of actual in-game, playing. And this attempt took over 7.5 hours. All in all, very fun. I really enjoyed doing this, and I might do a little bit more REPO from time to time, but who knows. I might end up uploading a video at some point showing, like, if I ever get to like level 50 or something in this save, I will make a video on that because that's crazy. All in all, that is REPO 1 million. Thank you for watching. Again, if you're new, feel free to subscribe. It doesn't really hurt anything, and you can always change your mind. If you want to see me, if you want to see my creation on Celeste level, you can click on the video on the left. If you want to see me play 7 different FNAF fan games, you can watch the video on the right. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you for all the support, and thanks for tuning in. Adios.